Hey there, hello, how are you? There's a second video in this module because I actually forgot to say something. Look how blue I am. I forgot to say something pretty important. I'm glad I caught it because I tried to make up for it in the About section with some links, but really I should show you. I mentioned headphones. I can't believe I didn't include headphones in the gear you need to buy section of this module, the first video. These are incredibly important. They're somewhat less important. I would almost say they're almost unnecessary if you're a solo caster, but here's why you should have them if you're a solo caster. If you're talking into the mic and something's wrong and you don't have these headphones on to hear yourself, you're not going to know something's wrong until you go and finish the recording and then go to edit it, and you're going to be pissed if there's like a crackling or some kind of noise that you weren't aware was. Because microphones hear better than we do. They're going to hear everything. Our ears don't hear everything microphones hear. I mean, their job is to hear everything. So if there's like a crackling or a clicking or something that you're not hearing because your headphones aren't on while you're recording, you're not monitoring your own voice, you're going to be real upset because you might not be able to fix that problem in post-production and editing, and you might have to re-record the whole damn episode again, which is going to be, I mean, it's happened to me, not for that reason, but I've had to record entire episodes a second time, and that is not pleasant, and it's never as good the second time around. Now, if you're not a solo caster and you have guests, you might be wondering, okay, well, I understand I would want to wear them for the same reason, but is there any additional reason? And the answer to that is yes. Again, this microphone's supposed to hear everything, right? Every microphone's job is to hear everything that's going on. That's what a microphone does. So if you have Riverside or Squadcast or whatever open and you're having an interview with someone and you're just using your speakers, right? You're just using your speakers to hear them and you're talking into your mic. Well, when their voice comes out of their speaker, what do you think's going to happen? The microphone's going to hear it. And then when you go to edit things afterwards, you're going to hear their voice on your recording track, and you're not going to be able to get rid of it. So headphones prevent something called microphone bleed, or in this case, they would be preventing headphone bleed. Microphone bleed is something that happens when people are in the same room, but in any event, when you wear headphones and you're having a conversation with someone, the same thing could happen. If your headphones are turned up too high, the sound could leak out of here, and your microphone could get it. But way less likely than your microphone getting, you hearing out of your desktop speakers, which it will absolutely hear. So you want to wear headphones to avoid that bleed, so that when you're listening to your own audio track, you're not hearing the other person's voice in your audio track, because that will cause problems in editing later. Super important to have headphones. Incredibly important for your guest to have headphones if you have a guest. Never allow a guest to record with you without headphones. Now, they don't have to be real. These are like $80 headphones, and there are like $300, $500, $1,000 headphones. They don't need to be those. They just need to be headphones to isolate the sound and keep the sound in your ears so that they don't make it into the microphone and mess you up later in editing. Never record with a guest who's not wearing them. You will be very mad in post-production when you're editing, because there will be all kinds of problems, as I just described, as a result of them not wearing headphones. Now, I understand that a lot of people might be trying to use a video element in their podcast, and they're like, but I don't want headphones on. It'll mess up my hair, or it'll make me look stupid. No, it won't. This is a professional production you're trying to put together. So if you have a video element in your podcast, then you should not care about having the microphone in the shot or having your headphones on. This is part of this business. This is part of this medium. If you're a YouTuber, that's different. You're not a YouTuber. You're a podcaster. Sound is really all we're supposed to be dealing with. And if you decide to introduce video, well, then this is tools of the trade. This is equipment that people would want to see you having in shot because, well, it shows that you care. So we talked about headphones, talked about microphone bleed. I want to mention again a little bit about microphone positioning. Notice how this is. I went over this briefly. It's off to the side. It's pointed at this corner of my mouth. I'm not speaking into it. I'm speaking past it. And those do things like prevent plosives, pa-pa-pa, pa-pa-pa, makes it sound better, sibilance, 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 worse when you don't have it angled off to the side. So you always want to have your microphone off to the side, 45 degree, pointed at your mouth, speaking across it. Don't get in front of it because you're hearing what's happening, right? That's not good. And don't get too far away from it, because if you get too far away from it, it's something like for every doubling of distance from the microphone you get, you half your loudness, or you half your dB input. I shouldn't say loudness. So it's also important to have the microphone relatively close to you. I can't tell you how many newbies will take a microphone and they'll stick it 6 feet away from them, and then they'll wonder why they've got so much reverb and terrible sound in their audio. Well, one of the reasons is they're too far away from their microphone. Now, I will touch in this video, because I mentioned it very briefly in the last one, I will touch very lightly on what signal-to-noise ratio is, and that's one of the keys to getting really good, clean audio. Signal-to-noise ratio is a ratio between signal and noise, obviously, right? It's in the name. Signal is the thing you're trying to hear, and in this case, that's our voice. This is my signal. If I were playing music, my signal would be a guitar or whatever. Noise, in this case, is really anything that isn't your voice, isn't the signal. So that's the sound of your room, it's reverberations, it's dogs barking in the background, although that technically is a kind of signal, but we can count that as noise. It's things we don't want the microphone to hear. Now, when you get closer to a microphone, you can think of it as if you are getting in the way of the noise. You are so close and clear to the mic that when you speak, you are overwhelming when compared to the noise that the microphone is completely capable of picking up. When you're far away, let me open this door. When you're far away, you can hear the living room, and it sounds terrible, right? You don't want that. And that creates a low signal-to-noise ratio when you're far away, meaning that signal and noise are very similar in perceivability, let's say. When you get close, you create a high signal-to-noise ratio. And when you create a high signal-to-noise ratio, and I can't remember if I don't think we've done this yet. I'm recording this after the fact, but I don't think we've created your trailer yet and gone through Audacity and denoising. So when you do a denoise on a piece of audio, it is way easier for the denoiser to do its job when you have a high signal-to-noise ratio as opposed to a low signal-to-noise ratio. You want a high signal-to-noise ratio. You want to be close, thus creating a very, very huge difference between the perceivability of your signal and the noise. Okay, so that's a little bit on microphone position. Generally 3 to 8 inches away. If you're a very loud talker, probably 8 inches away. I'm somewhere like 5 or 6 right now. And you can play with it and figure out what sounds best for you. But don't speak directly into it, because you're going to be spitting and plosifying into it. This is a very expensive pop filter. I think this is like an $80 pop filter. And the ones most people have are like these big black nylon pop filters, and they don't do a great job. And yes, my voice technically sounds better when I speak directly into this, but unless I'm going to invest in a high quality metal pop filter, sorry, I just tapped that, unless I'm going to do that, then I probably just want to practice this kind of mic technique, because it's pretty gosh darn good and I don't even have to deal with those other problems. Now, I'm happy I tapped this. That is an obnoxious noise, right? And I actually don't have what's called a shock mount on this mount. I should, but I don't, and that's because I'm very disciplined in my recording. I'm not going to be tapping the desk and bumping stuff and hitting the mic, so I'm not worried about having a shock mount on my microphone, but you maybe would be worried about having one on your microphone. It's not just when you tap this. It's when you hit the desk. You're also getting that rumbling, that vibration comes through the microphone and will be picked up. So some keys, or rather some tips for when you're recording. You don't want to have bracelets or watches on, because they'll tap the desk. Your mic will hear that. You actually want to probably keep your hands and arms off the desk if there's one in front of you. Sorry, I'm looking at myself instead of looking at the camera. You also probably don't want to have dangling earrings on if you're the kind of person who wears earrings. Necklaces and such that are allowed, you don't want those on. And going back to headphones for your guest can wear, AirPods. It's not going to sound great, but, they're the guest. It's kind of acceptable in podcast land that you cannot control the environment or the equipment that your guest has. We know that. Everyone knows that. They're going to have a shitty microphone. They're going to be in a terrible room. They're not going to know anything about mic technique or best practices or anything like that. You're just trying to do the best you can with the fact that this person's basically used to Zoom meetings and that's really all they know. Just make sure they're wearing headphones. Okay, that's step number one. And those headphones can be AirPods. They can be the old school wired kind of not AirPods, but I guess earpods in that case. They can use their laptop microphone. If they have to, you can't buy them a microphone, right? You have a guest every week. That'll get expensive. And they can use their webcam microphone if it's all they have, but make sure they have headphones. Gosh, that'll help a lot. And if they do decide to use AirPods or the dangling kind with the microphone right here, make sure one of two things. If they're AirPods, if they have a beard, try to get them not to wear AirPods because that microphone's going to rub up against the beard and the skin, and you're going to hear that in the recording. There's not really much you can get away with, you can do to get rid of that. There's a very expensive audio plugin called a de-rustler that might help with that, but that'll cost you more than $1,000. So we want to not get that kind of noise from AirPods. If they're the dangling kind with the microphone that's on the wire, you don't want that to hit the shirt. So you want them to hold that away from themselves if at all possible. Or maybe they could clip it in such a way that it's just not going to touch the shirt. And if you have a hard time getting guests to do that sort of thing, something that I find to be useful is to say, hey, look, not only is this going to make my podcast sound better. In fact, don't even say that. Say, the better you sound, the more serious my audience is going to take you, the more professional you're going to sound. I'm trying to do these things to help you ultimately be more successful as a guest. If you phrase it that way, they might say something like, oh, well, hold on, let me go find a pair of headphones. Or they might even go buy a cheap pair of headphones or something to make themselves sound more professional. And I would recommend having these conversations 24, 48 hours ahead of the actual recording so that they have time to prepare. Don't say, hey, you need headphones 5 minutes before you hit the record button. Well, they might not have any. That seems absurd that people don't have headphones as a podcaster because I've got like 46 pair of them somewhere. But normal people who don't create a media maybe don't have headphones. They might just have their AirPods. And again, a bearded fellow with AirPods, that's kind of unpleasant, so try to avoid that. What else can I talk about? The importance of having headphones, the importance of not banging your microphone, the importance of mic technique and positioning. By the way, try not to drift away from the mic while you're talking because that will create weird things when somebody else is listening. And we could talk a little bit about mounting solutions. So this thing is mounted to the wall in this booth. If you want to go buy a booth, you can do that, but you don't have to. You could just, they have a couple of mount types. They have ones that will clip to the edge of your desk. Like here's your desk, and it'll just clip on like this. And then the mic boom is up here, and then you can move the mic around the way I can move this around. Just like that. And so it's temporary. It can clip to your desk, and when you're done recording, your spouse won't get mad at you for leaving a microphone and a bunch of cables there over the course of the week or whatever, in between episodes. So there's that kind, and then there's the kind that has a weighted base and a stand, and the mic sits in the stand, and that can just sit right on your desk. You would call that a desktop mic stand instead of a mic boom, which is what these are called. I will link in the video above, the other video, links to a boom that's affordable and a mic stand for your desktop if you prefer that. That's also affordable, and cables and such. Now, I think that should just about cover it. Should give you all the information you need to make sure you're creating a good recording. Headphones being the most important thing that I've said. Second most important, mic positioning, although those are really close. Also really close, having your guest have headphones. So important. Even if you have to mail a pair of headphones around to all your guests and give them shipping labels to forward to the next guest, whatever it is, make sure your guests have headphones, okay? And just in general, always a good idea to have some kind of dry run with your guests, especially if they're not accustomed to being podcast guests, ahead of your actual interview. Treat it like, hey, just checking in, want to make sure everything's in line. Let's do a little test run if you have time. You have time 48 hours before we actually do the recording. Make sure we get all the kinks worked out. They will appreciate that. It'll go a long way for you, too, as a new podcaster to avoid really silly mistakes. Okay, that's it. Hope that's helpful. Questions, again, drop them in the Discord. Send me an email. Take care.